get your beach bod thing. Here's this template, just do this thing and you'll look good and people will think you're great. Like I could give two shits about that.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the greatest gifts we can give the world is our capability, our ability to be helpful, our ability to show up for our families, for our communities. If you can just feel good and be at ease in your body, then you're free to give your energy and attention to other stuff, like your family. I think the more that we can make our health, our capability, our nervous system a priority, then we can show up for others, including our kids, in a way better way. I was pretty self-destructive. I drank a lot. I was very violent. I hung out with violent guys, and he saved my life, I think, essentially, is that like he showed me a different way of being. You don't have to compromise your power as a man by when you're vulnerable and when you're sensitive. Your ability to be authentic and transparent, your ability to grieve, that is power, in my opinion.
Justice Marini has no friends.
Dude, I came across your Instagram and I was like, what is happening right now? I legit was like, what is happening? And I showed my wife yesterday and she was like, why is he doing that? I go, this is why I want to interview him. She's like, but what is that for? I know that's why I want to meet with him. And she's like, where is he? I go, that is why I want to meet with this guy. I don't know any of this stuff. He's doing some of the coolest stuff. So I have a bunch of questions, but my first one is, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, winter rolled in here today for the first time this year, so it's a little late, but I'm doing really good, man. I'm a bit overwhelmed with the attention and engagement through the social media situation that I've only been participating in for, I don't know, just a handful of months in earnest.
No way.
And, you know, after many, many years, like 15 years of abstinence from social media for particular reasons, I decided through the encouragement from my wife to get online because it's just a little more practical. We live way out in the woods and, you know, I drive 45 minutes to an hour every single day just to go train people in person. And I'm also a farrier, so I trim horses' hooves as well. So it's just a lot of driving, man. Yeah, it's a lot of driving. I'm going to take this off and put these on so I can hear you a bit better. Yeah, so it's just been, I'm not a tech guy. You know, I live a simple life. I live out in the woods with my wife and kids, and I'm a simple man. And so like getting on here and getting so much attention and trying to, you know, it's what I wanted. Ultimately, when I got online, I didn't know it was going to happen that fast or so dramatically. And so I'm just playing catch up, learning the tech side of things so that I can actually deliver my coaching to people, my practice, which seems to be interesting to people, which I never thought it would be, honestly.
Really?
I mean, I don't know. You know, I love the people that I train with in person, and they get a ton of benefit and they love working with me. I love being in the transformational space and being with people in the flesh and seeing how they change and how they embody more and how movement practice transforms them on all the levels and all their relationships.
Yeah. That's
what I love. And so now I'm just moving into a new way of doing that through the online arena. So it's a bit of a learning curve, but
wow.
I'm stepping up to the challenge.
Yeah, you are. Now, what part of it is most overwhelming for you? Like just how, like you've been away from it and coming back and just going like, it's like tech is just like, what is this? What has the world been doing? I've been over here head down. Like what part for you, Tim, is like most overwhelming?
It's it's just been about the delivery of my coaching because I don't want to. Well, here's the thing is that I have a beef with online coaching in general, or I have a beef with coaching in general because it's so exclusive. It's really hard for most people to afford good physical education.
Yes.
And it's one of the most profound things that I've ever taken on into my life as a practice that's helped me in so many areas of my life that I feel like it's so important. The world would be such a different place if more people just knew how to take care of themselves. So it's like, I've always wanted to provide coaching in a way that was like the poor people could have, essentially. You know, I've been poor for most of my life. I actually grew up in a wealthy family, and then when I left the nest, I became poor. And
really,
and I've only wanted to do what felt genuine and true to me as far as making money. And so I've always just been living pretty simple. So I've been trying, it's about finding a way to deliver quality coaching to people. I don't have any interest in like generic aesthetics centric, like get your beach bod thing. Here's this template, just do this thing and you'll look good and people will think you're great. Like I could give two shits about that.
Yeah.
It's like trying to figure out how to deliver quality coaching to people that's still custom and meets their unique needs, desires, but it's balanced with what I've found to be a well-balanced practice.
Yes.
And so it's just the tech, it's just the tech side. Like I'm now, I have it now. So I've been able to like finally, with the help of some people who are really kind in my community, got me a microphone. I was able to record my videos. I was able to get it uploaded. I think what I have to offer now is I feel good about it. So it's fun taking on people now. I'm enjoying the process now.
Okay, so I know when I share this with people, there's gonna be a part where it's like I was even a little nervous going, I don't want to offend him by what I call what he does, because it's like I don't want to call it mobility work. Like I don't know, but I don't know what you call it. What do you, because I've seen you with some of your, I don't know, clients or whoever, that you're showing them all these movements. And then I'm seeing what you're doing online with like with your wrists and all this movement with the bags, but then you're also like boxing and you're doing like, I've never seen, and maybe it's like a holistic, but it's different. And I can see how you're like, yeah, dude, I'm not into like 6-pack in 6 weeks type stuff. So is it self-cultivation? What do you call what you're inviting people into?
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, practice for me has always been about, I feel like one of the greatest gifts we can give the world is our capability, our ability to be helpful, our ability to show up for our families, for our communities. And like, I've always taken great pride in being able to like lift heavy stuff for people, to be able to push a car out of a ditch.
Yeah.
I love being able to wrestle adults at my age. I'm almost 40. I love being able to wrestle my kids all at once. Like I love getting underneath horses, but let me tell you, most farriers are living on anti-inflammatory drugs and they're in chronic pain all the time. And so I've found a way to take care of myself that allows me to continue to get underneath horses, enjoy the work, live pain-free. And I have my problems. Don't get me wrong. I still come up against stuff, it's just the cards we were dealt, right? Like I sat in the classroom for my whole life, just like most people. And I wore orthotics in my cleats when I was a baseball player and my feet are all fucked up. So it's like, oh, and excuse me, I don't know if I can curse on here, but
you can say whatever you want. I want you to be.
Okay. Yeah. And so I ain't perfect, but what I've done is just, I've just been obsessed with the body, with physicality and just like, and so it's just taken me down so many different paths of like trying all these different schools of practice, natural movement, biomechanics. I was lucky enough to study with Ido Portal's team for 6 months a long time ago and got, I've just pooled all the best of what feels good and true to me and what's worked for me. And I've applied that in my practice and it's been really, really helpful for people. And yeah, it's definitely around like self-cultivation and knowing oneself through movement, not just looking good. It's like if you're in chronic pain and you're lost in the discomfort of your own embodiment, then it's hard to show up for anything else in your life. You're consumed by it. So it's like, if you can just feel good and be at ease in your body, then you're free to give your energy and attention to other stuff, like your family. It's hard enough feeling really good and capable in the body and being patient with your kids. Try being in pain, stressed out, sympathetic nervous system's on fire, and you're just in fight or flight, and you got to show up for your kids and be patient. It's just that much harder. So like, I think the more that we can make our health, our capability, our nervous system a priority, then we can show up for others, including our kids, in a way better way.
Dude, do you feel like, okay, so this drive, you said you're obsessed, this drive for people to show up and be able to cultivate almost strength, mobility, all of this, and then think about pain, discomfort, so they could show up as their true self with other people and really offer whatever it is they're meant to offer to this world in a real way, free of distraction and pain. That desire, did it come from does it come from your own pain, or does it just come from, man, I've always just been driven to help people be their best? Like, where did this come from that you wanted to do this? Because I could see it. I could tell you're real about it, that you're serious. This isn't like something that you're just getting into. But where is it? I'm like, where does this come from? Like, what is the story behind it?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been physical. I was a
Yeah.
baseball player for most of my life. My dad was a semi-pro baseball player. And as soon as I could pick up a baseball, he was training me, 5 years old or something. He thinks I was way more talented than I was. I was very technically sound, but I was late bloomer. I wasn't strong. I wasn't fast. But I had good skill because, if you train at something, you'll get good at it. So he trained me into being pretty good. Became a pretty disenchanted young man at like 17, 18 years old as I was coming out of high school. And I almost went and played college baseball, but I dropped out the day before, essentially. Wasn't for me. That dream was over. And it was a bit more of his dream, I think, than mine. Anyway, I went through it's a whole story. I was pretty self-destructive, and I found
How so?
rock and roll. I drank a lot. I was very violent. I hung out with violent guys, and I just didn't have any real meaning. I was pretty nihilistic, and I just didn't understand the suffering I saw in society, and none of it made sense to me. I found rock and roll music. I basically lived for punk rock and hardcore music. That scene became like my church, and but many of my best friends were getting in jail. Many of them were dying. Some of them were committing suicide. And I made a huge turnaround at one point. I basically found one guy who's still a really good friend of mine. He saved my life, I think, essentially, is that he showed me a different way of being. He showed me how to live clean, how to live simple, how to clean up my body. He introduced me to meditation practice, which is where my whole life changed for real. It all is from practice, internal practice.
Yeah.
And that ended up leading me to my teacher, who I went and lived with for 6 years on retreat in Colorado, in the mountains of Colorado. And even to this day, and I don't know if he'd want to be named, so I'm not going to name him. He was a relatively controversial figure to some people. Him and his wife were my teachers, and I lived really close with them. That's where I got into horses. They rode horses, and they loved practice. They loved all forms of practice. And so practice was always about clarity. It was about moving your energy and finding clarity and being strong on all the levels. And so that was it. I fell in love with practice. He was into martial arts stances. He was very physical. He also worked 70 hours on the computer. He was bright as the sun. I mean, he was he is the most dynamic man I've ever met in my whole life. He was as naive as a child, and the wisdom and roar of a lion, so dynamic, man. And he was just I still love him so much, and his wife. And, it was hard for me. It was the most challenging and trying time of my life, but it really shaped me. And I think that was probably where I really fell in love with practice and all the schools, because he was all about we didn't subscribe to any particular dharma, any particular religion, none of that. It was just it was the love of practice, the love of consciousness. And so he loved to synthesize all the different schools. It didn't matter. It's it didn't matter who it was or what they were about. It's there was gold in all these different systems. That's it. That's the thing. That's where I really got it. And since then I've just been I just love it. And the thing is that all these different camps that I pull from, so many different schools of practice, they all have little tidbits of gold, and a lot of it resonates with me and some of it doesn't. I'd always give respect where respect's due. I don't claim to have come up with anything on my own. It's all out there, and I've just been grabbing it, trying it, applying it. This works, this doesn't, boom. Then I started working with people, applying something oh, this doesn't work with people. I'm throwing it out, And so it's just been a process like that.
Do you feel right now, because you spent all this time with this couple, and you said his focus was really clarity, practice and clarity. Do you feel like you still have that same level of clarity now in your life with your own kids, building your own thing here, cultivating your own thing? Do you still feel that same sense of clarity in your life right now?
That's a great question. It's everything changes once you have kids.
Yeah.
And my teacher told me that, he's like, one day he was like, and just love and show up fully for your practice right now. Because I live by myself most of the time, sometimes for months and months on end, just up in the mountains, living in a yurt, tending to the horses, riding horses with them, and doing my practice. And, even someone who loves practice as much as I did could get antsy, and he'd be like, just enjoy this time. It's not going to be like this forever. You're going to get out there, and I have a feeling you're going to have kids, because he knew I wanted to have kids. And I look back and I go, well, yeah, it's true. It's like, it's your practice changes. Right. And I think that's the whole thing, is that like, you want to be dynamic. You need to have all of these tools for maintaining clarity, for moving your energy, and for being sound of mind, so that you can actually, like, I can't be dependent on my sitting practice anymore. That can't be how I maintain clarity. I need to actually be clear beyond my sitting practice. And so it's like it's really dynamic, Now I look at my life as like self-realization through child rearing. Now my kids are my teachers, and I'm constantly presented with the opportunity to be present, to get out of my own way, to show up amidst the discomfort, to serve the bigger picture. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing as it always was, even when I was by myself in the mountains. Now I'm with my kids, and that's my practice. Now I'm with my wife. That's my practice. Now she's my teacher. And it's just about like surrendering to wherever you're at as what that is your teacher. And so right now, and it'll change, who knows what's going to happen for me over the next 20 years. Like, my kids will grow up. Maybe I'll go back on retreat. My sitting practice comes in, it comes out. My physical practice always stays, always stays. I always maintain my physical practice. It doesn't matter, because if I don't maintain my physical practice, I get ornery. My body starts to stiffen up. Like, I have to maintain it, because we're in a world right now that it doesn't foster, like, we've come so far from how the human animal has evolved to live and move. And so it's like, we have to create this for ourselves. We actually can't escape our biology. It's like, wow, we're made for movement, and we're made for living in a certain way, but we've very rapidly came into the modern world, and here we are. Here you and I are. Look at us. Where are you even at? I don't even know where you're at. We're just like,
I'm in Texas, man.
I drove an hour away. I picked up my raw milk share. I had a coaching call in a Taco Bell parking lot. I drove back here. Like, it's snowing. I'm inside one of my best friend's little apartments in town, so I could have this call and have good internet, because I can't trust my internet in the off-grid situation.
Yeah.
And it's just like, look at this crazy life we live, dude. It's insane. And so it's like, I'm just rolling with the punches, trying to maintain clarity, trying to raise my kids better than I was raised. God bless my parents. But, it's like, just trying to do better, trying to make the world a better place.
So one of the things that I'm like thinking about is I'm actually thinking a lot about your parents. And the reason why is, as we raise our kids, it's hard not to have expectations. Like, that's this fight. You want them to be good in the world, like to be of service. You want them to be and ready for what life gives them, for the challenges and all that kind of stuff. And it's hard to fight for expectations. And so when I hear you growing up, you said you grew up rich, and then your dad really teaching you all this stuff, and then you going into this lifestyle and going like, the question that's in the back of my head, which I did not think about until we're sitting here, is like, what do your parents think about, or I don't know if you have brothers, sisters, like, what do they think about the way you're choosing to live your life? And this backup question, which is its own kind of, I don't know, is like, does Tim care to be understood? Has he ever? And so I know those are two kind of loaded ones, but kind of, what does your family think about the way you're choosing to live your life?
Yeah. My parents love me. My parents love me. I mean, they think I'm radical for sure. I've always been a bit of a wild card, especially back when I was a teenager. My mom was always there for me. I think she yelled at me one time in my whole life.
Wow.
Which she still has shame about, like she was just like this haven for me to basically like run my craziness out and, she sometimes didn't know if I was going to come back or if I was going to end up like one of my friends. And she always just held space for me. And that created a really amazing bond for us to this day.
Yeah.
And my dad, yeah, we had some ups and downs through our relationship, and it's been a path of healing for sure. But he's always admired me. I know he just thinks he loves me, man. I know he does. And I have brothers. So I have three younger blood brothers.
Yeah.
And I have one older half brother, different mom.
Yeah.
And my youngest brother is like my ride or die. We've stayed the closest since we were kids. He rode with me when I was a teenager, as he was a little guy, and he came up through the ranks, so to speak, quick. And he's always lived like me. Like we pretty much left the world and headed to the mountains and headed to the wilderness, taught ourselves to hunt, taught ourselves to fish, and just trying to live as close as we could to nature. And he's always lived like that. He's still like that. He's still my ride or die. I'll talk to him today on the phone. He lives in Colorado, still in the town where I used to live on retreat. Whoa. Where I lived for 12 years. I lived there for 6 years after I came out of retreat too. And all my nieces and nephews are there. And yeah, I mean, my parents love me. I'm an anomaly to them. And they're also super inspired because I've never given a fuck about what society wanted from me or what people thought I should do. I never conformed, and I'll never conform. I guess, I am conforming to some degree, getting on social media and playing that game. But the truth is that I think that it's a net positive because of how I can influence a generation of men, some parents. Hopefully I can show that like, there's another way to be, there's another way to be a man too, because I stand in pretty staunch opposition to what I see as far as masculinity on the internet. Wow. The grind, the Andrew Tate. Yeah. I don't vibe with any of that stuff. Yeah. I stand in opposition to it. It's like, in my opinion, men, you don't have to compromise your power as a man when you're vulnerable and when you're sensitive. Your ability to be authentic and transparent, your ability to grieve, that is power, in my opinion. And you can still be dangerous and tender in all of that. And that's what makes an integrated man. And so I'm not perfect. I'm working on that stuff. But that's where my compass is pointed. And I hope to help people see that, because that's who I want my sons to be. I want them to have that all encompassing. I want it to, like, the totalness, the juice, like I want it to be all of it. I hope I'm doing a good job of that, and I'll keep trying my best to do it. Well, and then what was the other question? The other question was like,
care to be understood.
It's so interesting. Like, it's like I had a few of these videos I posted go viral on some small level, I guess. And, like there was one where I was just, I popped up outside and I was like, I'm just going to do my morning routine outside and just record it this time. And so I was like outside and I was doing self-massage and bouncing around and just getting morning light in my eyes and, out in the woods. And I got trashed on my posts, like so hard by people. Yeah, I got called a meth head. I got called a pedophile. I got called, they're making fun of my tattoos. So I was going to die from the toxicity of my tattoos. And, the same thing like that boxing one that went viral. It was like all of a sudden a bunch of people who appreciated what I was doing came in and they all started fighting each other about me being a good guy or me doing something right or me being a meth head or whatever. I look homeless. Everyone was saying I'm homeless. And I was, and I was trying to I wanted to like engage with as many people as I could and not fight people and actually just kind of, which I did I did one time on a post. And I felt bad about it. I came back around and apologized to the guy, but I've been trying to just actually show up as a kind person and maybe help them have a little curiosity to see it in a different way. And, but I noticed I was getting trashed so hard, it was starting to affect me. Like I was starting to feel bad about myself and I was starting to question myself. Like I was like, wait, man, I guess I do look a little run down. I never, I didn't see how I looked for this interview or nothing. I don't really know. Maybe didn't look good. I mean, I have been tired. My 1-year-old has been keeping me up. I do feel a bit run down. I haven't been training as hard. I guess I do look a little soft, all these things in my head. And I was like, whoa, I'm in the trap. I'm in the matrix.
That's it.
I'm in the matrix. And then I got my wife and some good friends pulled me out of it because I was like, it was really affected for a day. And I was like, I think that I think there is a deep desire. I think all people have some level of desire to be seen, for who they are authentically.
Yes.
And so I think I do. And I think I can be honest about that. It's like, and that's the practice, right? It's like showing up as your true authentic self and knowing that like you may or may not be seen, but at least you're honest. At least you're honest.
Yeah.
And the truth is that when you're honest, when you're just being yourself, people appreciate that. They get that mirror. It's like that authenticity is reflected and it's like a mirror. And then they feel inspired to just say, fuck it. I'm just going to show up as myself. It's okay. And so like, I hope through my practice, I get to be like, continue to remind people that I know I'm not perfect. I know I don't have all the answers.
So
I'm just sincere. I want to cultivate a culture of sincerity and authenticity. And hopefully that happens.
Okay, so that's really good. What brings you the most joy? Like in your day, when you're going through your day, what is the thing that you're most looking forward to? I guess outside family, because kids are like, when they laugh, it's like a drug. Like it's just like when you like, I think it's a drug. So that's that's a pass. Like,
yeah.
Outside of that, in your world, is it like when you're going to work on horses? You said you're a farrier. When you're with a client, or like, what are you most looking forward to? Like, what brings you the most joy? Like, with no judgment, it could be, dude, honestly, I love eating. That's my thing. I love to go eat. It just brings me so much joy. Sweet, cool. But for you, like, what is it? Because I'm seeing you do these things and it doesn't look like work. But I don't see you out. I don't see you as a farrier. I don't see you. You don't have that on your channel, on your Instagram. So, like, what brings you the most joy in your day?
Yeah. Well, when I create the space for me, since I moved out here from Colorado to here, I've been, it's like I fell in love with my wife. We had a kid. She has 2 boys already, so I've got 3 boys, and I live way out in the bush, and it's like been trying to find a way to support myself and my family in a way that's meaningful to me, and I can be fired up about it, has left me seemingly not leaving me the time to do what is like my absolute most favorite thing, which I've been doing better now that I'm creating a new way of working with people and have more space, which is pursuing wild animals. I like hunting. I like getting as close to wild animals as I possibly can. And like, I am afraid of heights. I'm afraid of speed, like going fast.
Really?
I drive like a granny. If I ride a bike, I'm going slow. But I like to get like close to bears, and I like to like feel that there might be big cats around me as I'm moving around the backcountry. That is like when I'm out in the quietude of the wilderness and I have my traditional bow, and I'm just able to walk and stop and listen and spend as much time as I want. That is my absolute happy place. That's it.
When did you discover that? When you were living in Colorado with your brother? Like, when did you discover like this, I was made for this? And did you ever look back and go, maybe some of my tension growing up was that I was encumbered. I didn't know that the city, I don't even know if you lived in a city. I don't know where you lived before. I don't even know where you live now. But do you feel like, man, I was always like, like I didn't know what my surroundings were, but did you, now that you're outside, you're pursuing animals, like, are you like, oh my gosh, a lot of this was that I just wasn't at peace because I wasn't where I was made to be. And there was no way anyone would have known that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I found it after I came out of retreat, and I was living out there in southern Colorado in a town called Crestone, where it's at the end of the road, backed up to these 14,000 foot mountains. There's nothing going on. There's no industry. There's one tiny gas station, a little health food store that my friends own, and like a very small community. And there's not much going on out there. And I was lucky enough to make some friends who were backcountry hunters, and I got to get in with them and learn some of the ropes. And like, yeah, it's going out in pursuit of food, going out in pursuit of wild meat if you don't see anything, you still had the absolute most fulfilling time. It's such a nourishing experience to just, it's like the most stacked activity. I talk about that a lot on my thing. It's like, how do you stack your activities? It's like you're moving through the landscape in varied ways. So you're building a resilient body, you're getting your nature exposure, you're getting peace and quiet, you're hopefully getting around wild animals, you're getting full spectrum light in your eyes, you're in pursuit maybe with some of your close people, and that's supremely bonding. And so it's such a holistic experience, and it's a part of our blood, in my opinion. It's like, for most of our existence, we've been in deep relationship with our food, and we've pursued wild animals, and we had deep relationship with nature. So like, it just scratched off all the boxes for me, and it became a major part of my practice. And yeah, luckily, like, had some really good friends who were very successful hunters. So I got to kind of get the like fast track into how to hunt. I was super grateful. And yeah, and like got to harvest a number of elk while I lived in Colorado. And that whole process of getting all my friends out into the backcountry to break this animal down and carry it all out, and to feed my family for a year straight just on, elk meat and organs. And that's just it's been so important to me, because, like I felt like I wanted to rebel when I was a teenager. I wanted to resist modernity. I wanted to resist this sick culture and what I'd been born into. But like, I realized like none of the ways of resistance that I was aware of really bore fruit. Like showing up in a black mask at protests, animal rights, stuff like this, stuff that I cared about and still care about animal rights, actually.
Yeah.
Never less than now. But none of them really bore fruit the way that I wanted real change. I wanted to really resist, and like harvesting my own wild food and not having to be a part of the food system, like, was such a radical resistance for me. Like, I was like, this is really punk rock. Like, backcountry hunting is punk rock. And so, yeah, it's just been so fulfilling. I feel like I'm finally creating change in the way that I really want to, by supporting local farmers, by eating clean, by supporting my neighbors and helping them with stuff. Like, we're taking the power back, we're re-villaging. That's what I'm trying to do with my family and friends. It's like trying to
Tell me what you mean by
re-village.
that, because that is, I feel like that's something that, okay, yeah, tell me what you mean by that, re-villaging. What does that mean to you when you say that?
Yeah, well, I think for most of our existence, we lived in like clans, small groups of people, tribes, where we took care of each other. We looked after each other. Like, we had people who made medicine. We had people who made textiles. We had people who went and harvested plants. We had people who went and harvested wild animals. We had people who fought, if that had to happen. We had warriors who defended. And that builds real intimacy, and I think that is such a huge part of what we need as an animal. And like, we don't have that. We're living in cubed houses. We don't know our neighbors. We fear our neighbors. It's like, we're so disconnected, yet we're living on top of each other, and there's so much fear. And so, the way that we live, like, the land I live on, we have like 5 different families. Most of us have known each other for over 10 years. All our kids have grown up with each other. We got 12 kids on the land. They all run around with each other, building shelters, riding bikes, shooting their bows and arrows. My oldest son can identify more wild plants and build a fire. He's 6 years old. It's like, than the average person. He's a great shot with a bow. He's learning to fight. He's also can read at like an 8th grade level. He can do math, or he can read novels. He does math at an 8th grade level. It's like, there's just a different way. And that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to live close with our friends and take care of each other and be there with each other and grieve with each other, and like help each other out, because it takes a village. It's true. It takes a village to raise kids. It takes a village. And so
100%.
Yeah, I feel really grateful. I feel really grateful that I got amazing people around me, and we're doing our best, we're doing our best. It's like, we're not set up with the right hand to do it in the best way that we want. And I'm really idealistic. I'd love to do it even better, but man, I feel really lucky.
Sounds like you guys are crushing it. But was this a conscious decision with all of you, or did one person buy the land and say, hey, come on and we'll do it together? Or is it like how did that part work? And where are like what state are you in? Like what?
I live in Oregon.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's basically one of my really, really good friends, actually, who I met living on retreat. So he came through to study with my teacher. What was this? 10 years ago or something like that. He ended up coming and deciding he was going to stay. And so we lived together in the retreat house, and we lived together for 2 years. We sat with each other, thousands of hours of practice right next to each other at 4 a.m. Like one of my closest brothers, and his wife is one of my absolute best friends. And we built a supplement company together at one point back when we were younger and like
No
on
kidding.
retreat. Yeah. Yeah. It was an herbal company that specialized in clearing infectious disease in horses. This is really radical too, because we were super successful. We were curing equine protozoal myeloencephalitis called EPM in horses. We were curing Lyme's disease. And I can say it now because we're not going to company anymore, but we were legitimately eliminating these diseases, full symptoms gone away, proven through Western diagnostic testing. And the FDA shut down the company that produced the herbal formulations for our company. And that was a big bummer because we were like really helping animals. Yeah, that was an era. And so he's my brother. And so he moved out here from Colorado. He left the retreat. I stayed on retreat for a number more years. He came out here and he bought some land, and he's kind of just been importing his closest friends over the years. And so now we're just got like a solid little group of families, and it's a really eclectic group. You know, we got music, we got a number of professional musicians that travel around, and it's a trip. It's a real trip.
Like, okay, so all right, this is great. And then I'll have like some stuff that I'm like, I'll have like quicker answers, not as, I don't want to say heavy, but as descriptive for you to have to.
It's all good. Bring it on.
I'm loving this. Do you guys live completely off the land?
You mean like as far as what we need to be sustained, like food wise and stuff? No.
Yeah.
No. We do have a large greenhouse. We do. A number of people put in a large effort into growing a lot of food. We grow a ton of food in the growing season. Greenhouse goes for a little longer into the winter, but then eventually it goes away. And then we eat wild meat. We've raised sheep at times. We have chickens, so we provide our own eggs. And it's a bit of a process. You know, we're working towards becoming more and more self-sustained.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. You know, it's a process, and we're getting closer and closer. But we have an amazing co-op that's like 30 minutes outside of the land, and so we're stoked. There's an amazing local food scene here too. So we're
awesome. And so, all right, and then this is great because it's like I feel like I'm catching you in process, like
yeah,
you know what I mean, like which I'm stoked about because that's kind of the goal of all of this, is that I want to find people early, and a lot of the people that you find that are out there and known, it's like their thing is established. They're not perfecting. They're more just selling. And so it's like, I want to find someone that's at the early stages, just figuring it out, doing their best, but they're really clear on their philosophy. How that works out, they're still working and will always be working, but their philosophy is clear of why they're doing what they're doing. And so that's what I love about what I'm hearing from you. And and I'm just going to ask these questions if you're like, nah, dude, like, I don't like whatever, but do you mind, you had said now you're poor. Do you mind being poor? Is that even something that you think about? Or is it like, do you look at that from a financial perspective and like, you're like, but my life is rich and that's what I judge it by? Like, does that matter? Was that hard for you coming from wealth to where you are now? Do you judge yourself on that in any way? Like, you know, like, yeah, that's what I'm really curious about that for you personally.
Yeah, it's been a process because you know, well, we were poor as a family, and then my dad, rags to riches, made a bunch of money, and he became wealthy. And so we graduated from like a one-room house up, you know, until I was like in my teens, and we're living in these big ass houses. But then I started to like, you know, I started to kind of branch out into alternative ways of seeing the world. And I read like Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States, Civil Rights Movement. And like, I wrote Noam Chomsky, and my world got cracked open. And I started to see that there was like major injustice in the world. and I wanted to resist. I wanted to do something. So I started to have major disdain for having money in my family. I took great pride in being poor once I moved out. And then I went and lived on retreat, and I didn't care about anything except my practice. And then, coming out of it, I was like, I've realized that, there's like money in itself isn't evil.
Mm-hmm.
And I could probably do a lot of good being, I feel like I'm a good person. I feel like I could do well with some money. I could create some change.
Yeah.
And, but I was never willing to I was never going to sell out in some way to make money. So like, I've always just been like really happy, living simple, living like just doing what I love to do, making enough money to get by. And I'm in no means poor. I'm insanely privileged, and I'm making decent money now, but before, even though I wasn't making good money, I was still doing a lot better than a lot of people on this planet. And so I try to remember that because, I might not have a ton of money, but I got a nice truck that I drive around. I'm making payments on it. I didn't even put $1 down for it when I got it, but there's a couple nice things in my life that I pay for. And so I don't think I'm poor. I'm not poor. And I've never felt poor. I've always felt like I kept it real. And so and the people around me were people I chose because they kept it real. And it was just there was just a certain juice, to the relationships, and just always meant so much more than money.
Do you are you always looking at life at how do I make life simpler? Or are you kind of looking at life how do I make this more meaningful? Or is it all of the above? As I'm hearing you, I'm trying to fight assumptions. And that's why I think there's a lot of tension in your comments is people have assumptions. And so they're building up around their insecurities and their judgment of you. And they're going to war with how you offend their own insecurities and push back against how they think life should be lived or how a person should look or live. And so your authenticity is offensive. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so when I'm talking with you, I can feel internally, you don't know that about him. And that's where a lot of these questions are coming from, because you do live radically different from me, I think, from modern, but it makes a lot of sense. It's it's actually aspirational. I think and I think when I hear you, I go, I bet he's always been a leader. People have been drawn to him, but I bet he's always been the tip of the spear. So it's all you're a blunt, sharp, I don't sound weird, but you're a blunt instrument. But you break through, and I can sense that I'm not judging you, but I'm building a story that is not true yet. And there's some stuff around that. I don't know. Have you noticed that with people, that it's there's a way that you tend to offend, that you can offend or repel people just by being yourself, not by stating any hardline thing, but just by your own existence? And has that always been there for you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a pretty intense guy, and I know that. And I'm definitely extreme, I'm I go full tilt in whatever I'm going to do. It's I learned to traditional bow hunting, and I'm that's all I do. I'm all I do is train, I'm mightier than thou, and I'm getting off coffee for a moment. Fuck everybody who drinks coffee, and so, I'm very principled and very idealistic, and I'm definitely really extreme. And, a large part of my practice has been learning to soften,
Wow.
And just to be able to be curious and see through other perspectives. Cause I definitely feel at times in the past and today still, I feel like I got the answers just like everybody else, and we can get judgy. And, I owe it to my wife, actually. She's the most dynamic person I've ever met in my whole life. She's an absolute anomaly, in my opinion. I feel like I didn't even know that someone like her could exist, and that I get to be with her is the most magical thing in the world. And she is her dynamic nature and her ability to maintain curiosity and see through another person's eyes. She is absolutely profound. And so I'm learning through her every day, you know, to just be softer and to be able to just like sit back and see through other perspectives. And yeah, I think I become more and more accessible to people the softer I get. And what's beautiful is that like it doesn't compromise any of the other qualities of myself. I just get more well-rounded, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I still love the feeling of being dangerous, you know, like that ability to be violent if I had to. I love the cultivation of strength and capability. And over the past few years, it's been a different practice where like I'm learning to be soft and to hold space and to listen, deep listening. She's an amazing listener. I've got other mentors in my life that are reflecting that for me. And like that gift of listening, you know, if you could be solid as a mountain, big presence, and deep listening where you don't have an agenda and you're just there to witness somebody. I mean, that's amazing. What a gift. So that's what I'm trying to do.
All right. Resistance band in your mouth. What is that about?
Yeah, that's a bite and neck training that I learned through a system called MoveMed. A guy named Nate, who's a good friend of mine now, he has a company called MoveMed, and it's posture, brain and nervous system training. And yeah, so essentially it's like there's a number of factors why we might have a weak jaw and a weak neck. And that has a number of cascading effects to the body downstream. And so some people weren't breastfed. And so they didn't develop the proper suction mechanics and the subsequent strength and shape of the cranium and jaw and neck. And so when that happens, we have, you know, if we aren't breastfed, then we could have this like receded lower jaw.
Yeah.
And then people tend to, because when that happens, it's hard to breathe.
Yeah.
And they breathe through their mouth. And then to make that easier to breathe, the head comes forward. It'll open up the airway. And so when that happens, the head goes forward and then the pelvis can come forward. There's a number of ways that the body will adjust to stack itself in gravity and be balanced. But when that happens, your body loses its internal stability, and your nervous system, which runs the length of your spine, is affected. And so it's a way of strengthening the jaw, strengthening the neck, pulling the head and neck back into a proper stack over the rib cage and the pelvis. And then while we're doing that practice, we're working on developing this engorged, pressurized torso that creates the stability from the inside to have a healthy nervous system, have the organs in their right position, have lymph moving in the proper way. And yeah, it's just some foundational stuff that I take all my clients through. It's been one of the most important things for me, dealing with my own pain, my own posture, and it feels amazing.
Okay, boxing. Where did that come from? Like, why is that important to you? Or is it just like, it's just my form of physical whatever? It felt like it wasn't your first time. When I was looking at those videos, I was like, he knows how to land a punch. Like, what was that?
Yeah, I've always loved combat. I loved fighting as a kid. I'm not proud of the fights I got into, but I loved it. And yeah, I've always just felt like it was important for me to be able to defend myself and to just like scratch that off the list. Like the world's crazy enough. Like I know that I can fight if I have to. And then especially once I started to like co-parent my brother's kids and stuff, like, you know, once you start to have people that you really care for, you want to just be able to handle whatever situation that comes up. I've always just loved the feeling of striking. And it became even more relevant to me when I started to learn about biomechanics and the gait mechanics, like walking and running, this contralateral reciprocation that I learned from an organization called Functional Patterns. And it's all relevant to it's like throwing is one of the most natural human movements there is. We've been doing, it's one of the most primary movements, this contralateral reciprocation, where like, as you know, as our legs move, the opposite arm moves and it propels us through space. Right. And so throwing is the same thing. Throwing a ball throwing a punch is the same thing, same mechanics, more or less. And, it just feels really good. And since I have a pretty strong focus on training biomechanics, the biomechanics of moving through space, so essentially walking, yeah, it's very relevant to how I train. And I feel like striking really helps me to continue to develop as a better mover through space because it's similar mechanics. And it feels good. It moves a ton of energy. It's very cathartic. It's like shooting a bow, an arrow. It's like biting into a steak. It's that like, just that like, that feeling. So yeah, I love it.
Okay. This is okay. Real quick, we're going to kind of blitz through these next three questions. As a cultivator, as someone that wants to cultivate more movement in people, more authenticity in people, more life, more like just you are about cultivating more in people and ability, accessibility, all of that, holistic, them being holistic in all forms of life. You've said so many things that are so good, being dangerous, revillaging. I love when you say the juice. I don't know what it is about when you say it, but it's awesome. What is it when it comes to movement, really quick, that you think people need to stop doing to increase movement or mobility in their life? What is the thing that you see people doing all the time that you're like, hey, if you could stop doing this, stop doing that?
I think that people just need to make movement not an isolated event in their week or their day. Like it's hard to be completely sedentary and then go to grinding it out for an hour at the gym. Like it's more about creating like that, like lifestyle of movement. So like at my house, we don't have any furniture. Yep. We eat on the floor. We eat off one plate. We sit in a squat. We sit cross-legged. We move around. We crawl. We wrestle. Like it's just create an environment that gives you like movement snacks where you're constantly nibbling on movement and you're keeping the body open and you're exposing your body to more and more ranges, different stimulus. A lot of people work on a computer, man. And so like, if you're on a computer all the time and you're stuck in flexion, then do some band and neck training. Like when I work on my computer now, I have a band attached to the door, and in between calls, I get up, I put that band in my mouth, I get big, I breathe three-dimensionally, I get heavy down through the ground, and I undo a little bit of what was being done. And then, when I'm going to go to the kitchen, I'm going to do some lunges, I'm going to pick up my kettlebell, I'm going to crawl, I'm going to wrestle my wife or the kids or whatever it is, and we'll push each other around, and just creating more of a lifestyle of movement because, our lives back in the day, back in the bush, required that we moved all the time for all the things in our existence. We had to move to acquire food, medicine, to move to a different place to live, all that stuff. We were always moving. And so moving more into like having that being more regular.
So Tim, man, awesome. This is great. This is incredible, dude. I need, self-cultivation. I believe in that. Movement. I see that you're outside barefoot, kettlebells, punching bags, just resetting everything, sunlight. I'm into it. I need kind of a movement friend in my life. What do you say about us being friends?
No, I don't think so, man.